I've been dying to tell you about some of these new archaeology discoveries. We're going way back today, back to the Ice Age, like 17,000 years ago. There's this baby, a little baby boy. They found his remains in Italy.
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's so much more than just old bones. We can use DNA analysis to paint a picture of his life, see the world through his eyes, almost.
It really is like a time machine. And we're talking Italy, but Ice Age Italy, glaciers everywhere. And his remains, they were found in this cave, Grotta della Mura, it's called. It's in the Puglia region.
Oh, Puglia! It's a gold mine, that place. Neanderthals, the Altamura man, even dinosaur footprints. So many layers of history.
Sounds like a dream for an archaeologist. This little guy, he lived just a few centuries after the last glacial maximum. That's when the ice sheets were at their biggest. Wow. It's mind-blowing to think what it must have been like to be born into a world like that.
Oh, totally. A completely different world. The landscape, the challenges, everything.
So what can you tell us about this baby? What did they find out?
Well, his skeleton was really well preserved. They could tell a lot from it. For one, he was pretty small, like a little over 2.5 feet tall. And they think he was somewhere between 7.5 and 18 months old when he died.
Oh, wow. So young. Do they know anything about how he died?
They think it might have been this genetic condition. It's called familial hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It probably led to his death early on. But it's not just about how old he was or how he died. It's about how he was buried. That's the really interesting part.
Oh, really? What was it like?
They found him covered with these rock slabs, carefully placed. And get this, it was the only grave in the whole cave. No other burial goods or anything like that.
Huh. That's really interesting. You have to wonder what that meant to them, what that kind of burial signified.
It does make you think, right? Even then, in those incredibly tough times, they had rituals, practices around death and burial. It shows care, even for the very young.
Okay, now this is where things get really wild. The DNA analysis. Ready for this? He had dark skin, dark curly hair, but blue eyes.
Yeah. Talk about challenging our assumptions, right? What we think early Europeans must have looked like.
I know. I always thought they all had like pale skin and brown eyes. But how do they even know that? I mean, from DNA that's thousands of years old, how is that even possible?
Well, there's this system they use called Plex. It looks at the specific genetic markers for eye color and for skin tone. They look at the markers for melanin production. Even with DNA that old, they can get a pretty accurate picture.
So blue eyes. Were those common back then?
Not really, no. Most Europeans in the Ice Age had darker skin and brown eyes. Blue eyes didn't really spread widely until much later, maybe like after 14,000 years ago.
Wow. So this little baby, this tiny little guy, he was like one of a kind
Yeah.
in a harsh, icy world. Incredible. Is there anything else his remains can tell us?
Oh, yeah. A lot, actually. It looks like he had a bit of a tough start in life. When they analyzed his teeth, they found these accentuated lines. They say that suggests stress before and after he was born. Maybe his mother was malnourished or went through some really tough times during pregnancy.
Oh, that's so sad. It just shows you how hard life must have been back then.
Yeah, for sure. And there's more. They found a fracture on his collarbone. Seems like he had a difficult birth. It's a good reminder of what childbirth must have been like in prehistoric times. Not easy, even with support from their community.
It's just amazing to me how much information they can get from these remains. It's
Yeah.
making me think about his mother. We were talking about the difficult birth and her possible hardships. I wonder if they can learn anything about her life, too.
Well, we don't have her remains, but we can make some educated guesses. Based on what we see with the baby, like those lines on his teeth, the accentuated ones. That suggests she might have been malnourished. Or maybe she was just under a lot of stress while she was pregnant.
So maybe it wasn't all just the environment, right?
Yeah.
Her own health and like how easy it was to find food. That must have all had a huge impact on the baby's development, even before he was born.
Yeah, exactly. And they can tell even more from the isotopes in his teeth. They figured out that she stayed in a pretty small area the whole time she was pregnant. So it seems like they had a pretty settled lifestyle, focused on gathering whatever they could find in their territory.
It really paints a picture, doesn't it? This mother doing everything she could to survive, to provide for her baby in this crazy, harsh environment.
Yeah.
It makes you think about that bond between mother and child. It must have been incredibly strong, even way back then.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even without any grave goods or anything, they still chose to bury him. That says a lot about their emotional connection, about how much they cared for their dead, even when things were so hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good reminder that these people weren't just robots. They weren't just focused on surviving. They had feelings, beliefs, and relationships, just like us.
Right. And the genetic analysis actually suggests there might have been some inbreeding going on in their community. So that tells us a little something about their social dynamics, too. And the challenges they must have faced, trying to keep their gene pool diverse, especially in a small, isolated group.
It makes you wonder, what other secrets are hidden in his DNA? What else can we learn?
Oh, I'm sure there's a ton we haven't even discovered yet. I mean, we're really just getting started. As technology gets better, who knows what we'll be able to see, what we'll be able to learn from ancient genomes.
Like having a better and better window into the past. So we've talked about his unique features and all the challenges he faced. But his genome, that tells us something about migration patterns too, right? Like
Right.
how humans moved around.
Right. So his genome shows he's connected to this thing called the Villa cluster.
Hmm.
And the Villa cluster, that's a group of people who lived all over Europe after the Ice Age. Scientists used to think they came from Central Europe and then spread out from there.
Wait, so are you saying this baby's discovery is changing that theory?
Yep, exactly. Because he's linked to them, it actually looks like the Villa lineage might have started much earlier and way further south, maybe in Southern Europe. So we have to rethink things, like when they migrated and the routes they took during and after the Ice Age.
That's incredible. This one tiny skeleton is changing how we see the past.
See, this is why it's so important to keep an open mind, to be ready for new evidence, even if it challenges everything we thought we knew, because history, it's always being rewritten, as long as we keep finding more clues.
And who knows what else is out there? Maybe more individuals like this baby with their own stories, just waiting to be discovered.
I know, that's what makes it so exciting. The past is like a giant puzzle, and we're just starting to put the pieces together. Every new discovery, no matter how small, helps us understand who we are, where we came from, and our place in the grand scheme of things.
That's really what we're trying to do with this deep dive, right? So what are the key takeaways here? What do we want to remember about this baby even after this episode is over?
You know, for me, it's the power of these stories, these individual stories that shine a light on the bigger picture of history, this little boy's life. It was short, it was full of challenges, but it gives us a glimpse into a world that's so different from our own. And he reminds us that even when things are tough, human connection, care, and resilience, that's always been at the core of who we are, and his unique genes. That makes us rethink our assumptions about the past, and embrace the diversity of humans, back then and now.
I love that. It reminds us that history isn't just about dates and names in a textbook. It's about real lives, countless lives, each one with its own story. And sometimes the smallest voices can have the biggest impact.
Exactly. And his story also shows the power of science. I mean, thanks to DNA analysis, we can look at the past in ways we never could before. It's like we can rebuild their whole lives, their families, even figure out how they moved around the world.
It's a time machine in a lab. And as these techniques get even better, who knows what we'll find? The possibilities are endless.
I know, right? But for now, let's just take a moment to let this all sink in.
Okay, so we're back. And I gotta say, I'm still thinking about this Ice Age baby. It's amazing how much one little skeleton can teach us, and how it can change the way we think about human history.
It really does show you what's possible when you combine, careful archaeology with all this cutting-edge science. But at the same time, it's like, there's still so much we don't know.
His story really makes you realize that our ideas about the past are always changing as we find new things. I always thought ancient humans were all pretty similar looking. But this baby, dark skin, blue eyes, it just blows that whole idea out of the water.
Doesn't it? It just shows that diversity has always been a part of us from the very beginning. These ancient people, they were complex, just like us.
It really makes you wonder, what other things we believe about the past might be totally wrong.
That's what I love about science. You're always questioning, testing, and sometimes you have to revise what you thought you knew. That's how it works when you discover new stuff.
So as we wrap up our deep dive here, what's the one big question that stuck with you about this Ice Age infant?
That's a good one. I guess for me it's this. We know this baby had blue eyes, but what else was out there? What other unique things, what other unexpected stories are we going to find? How much more can we learn about our ancient ancestors?
That's a great question, and it reminds us just how much is still out there, waiting to be discovered.
For sure. Archaeology and genetics, they're changing all the time. We have so many new ways to look into the past. Every little thing we find adds another piece to the puzzle. It's pretty exciting.
Well, I think it's safe to say that this baby, this little Ice Age baby from Italy, He's made a real impact on us. He's opened our eyes to a whole different world and made us rethink what we thought we knew.
I agree. He shows us that every life, every single one, has a story to tell, no matter how long or short it was. And those stories, they help us understand history in a whole new way.
Well, that's about it for our journey back to the Ice Age. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive and that it's made you a little more curious about the past. Because remember, there's a whole world of hidden wonders out there, just waiting to be uncovered.